The other day, I came across this very revealing article from the classical music website Backtrack, which detailed how the presentation of classical music has changed over the last 10 years. Now, according to their website, they do this by sifting through all the programs from every single classical music related event that's listed in their database. So, for example, in the year 2023, Backtrack compiled 31,309 events from all over the world. Now, of course, there could be many more that Backtrack hasn't counted, but I think that this gives us a really good enough sample size to get the statistics that we want to get out of this from a 10-year period starting in 2013 all the way to 2023. Now, since I'm a composer, I was especially keen to see what kind of statistics they had on living composers. So check this out. In 2013, only 6% of all music that was being performed all over the world was by a living composer. Now, fast forward that to 2023, and you'll see the number jumps all the way to 14%. And if we focus in on a couple of countries like the United Kingdom and the United States especially, you'll see that the numbers actually jumped a little bit further. So in the United Kingdom, we started at 6% and jumped to 15%, while in the United States, we jumped even further. So we started at 7.5% all the way to 20%, which is really a huge jump, of course. Now, in terms of living composers, Backtrack also makes a distinct section for female composers. So in 2013, out of the 100 most performed living composers in the world, only 11 of them were female composers. Fast forward 10 years, out of those 100 most performed living composers, 36 of them are female composers. So of course, this means we jumped from 11% 10 years ago to 36% today. And if we go up to the top 20 most performed living composers, out of those 27 of them are women, which is about 35%. Now, for me, anecdotally, these statistics actually make a lot of sense. So about 10 years ago, I graduated from USC and started my master's degree at Juilliard. And after that, I continued on very seriously in my composition career. And I've seen actually a lot more listings in terms of competitions. I've seen a lot more performances of new music, and I've seen, of course, a lot more female composers enter the field and be very successful. So for me personally, these numbers are not very surprising, but I like the fact that we have some hard data to support what I've seen in the last 10 years in the composition field. Now, all these statistics about living composers has got me thinking about my own statistics here on this YouTube channel, which I have never shared until now. Now, I have about 4,000 to 5,000 subscribers as of this taping, with about 100,000 views accrued over the last 90 days. So in terms of a sample size, I think I have a large enough sample size presently to share some of these statistics in a meaningful way. So I'm going to categorize my statistics in terms of two groups. The first one are going to be my long form videos. Those are like videos that you're watching like this one, videos like how much money I made as a composer in 2023, videos like how I study Bach chorales, that kind of video. Those are going to be one category. The other category of video I make on this channel are my short form videos, little tiny 60-second or less excerpts. I have hundreds of these on the channel. So these two seem to have very different demographics in terms of who watches these types of videos. In terms of age, 63% of my audience is between the ages of 18 and 34 years old. This actually I like very much, since it shows that I have a sizable audience that is much older than that watches these videos. So I like that it's balanced in that way. Now, in terms of gender, this is where it gets really skewed. 94% of my viewers are male, while only 6% are female. Now, I think this has to do more with the medium of YouTube itself rather than the field of classical music. Now, if we take a look at my short form videos, you'll see that a much larger percentage of people watching those videos are in that 18 to 34 age bracket. So here it's going to be 83%, which is quite a hefty amount, and actually not very surprising. These are very related to those TikTok kind of videos, right? And then if we look at the gender gap, it is much closer here. We see that 82% of my viewers here are male and 18% are female. So that's a significant difference between the long form and the short form videos. Now, in terms of gathering anything from this data, I'm not sure if there's anything meaningful we can get out of it, solely because all my content is here on YouTube, which again, I think is heavily skewed towards male viewers. I don't really participate on TikTok or Instagram all that much, so I don't really have a sizable sample size in those platforms. So I'm curious to hear from you in terms of age and gender, what you think of this data. Did it surprise you? Do you feel that it doesn't really accurately sum up what the state of the viewers or the consumers or the listeners in contemporary classical music are? Or do you think that it actually lines up with what you see anecdotally in your own day-to-day life? And I thought this was an interesting data set right here in terms of my podcast, The Sad Haddad Show, which you should all subscribe to, by the way, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. Of the 42 guests that I've had on my show as of this taping, 17 of them have been women, which accounts for about 40% of all the guests. Now, this 40% number actually surprised the heck out of me. I knew that I had a lot of female composers and musicians on the show, but I didn't know that the number was quite that high. Now, this 40% number actually reflects my day-to-day life as a composer a bit more accurately, I would say, than my YouTube analytics would show, or even the Backtrack statistics show. Now, my sample size on the podcast is definitely smaller than what we see on my main YouTube channel or with the Backtrack analytics. Now, because of the sample size discrepancy, we really can't make too much of a conclusion about what this means for contemporary classical music moving forward. But what I can say in terms of both female composers and composers that are, of course, in that younger age demographic between about 20 years old and 40 years old, is that they have a lot more visibility now than they ever have before. If we're going to conclude anything from this video, I think that the future of contemporary classical music is actually extremely bright. Now is the best time for anyone to be a composer. I don't think it matters what kind of music you're writing, whether you're writing orchestra music, opera music, choral music, band music, solo, chamber, electroacoustic, dance-related music. I'm running out of fingers over here, but I hope you're getting the point. Not 10 years ago, not 20 years ago, not 50, not 100, certainly not 200, 300, 400 years ago. Now is the best time to be a composer. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. We have never seen this kind of proliferation of performances by living composers, basically ever. So in terms of the data and my own anecdotal experience in this field, I don't see any proof that new classical music or the composers that write it are on the decline. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Those are my thoughts. See you next time.